welcome back to the Donkey Vote podcast. Today we have Michael Galea today. Could you talk a bit about yourself for the audience who may not know you?
Sure, thanks Tobias. Hey there, I'm Michael Galea. As with I think a few of the MPs that you're interviewing at the moment, I'm actually a first term MP, so we've just passed our 12-month anniversary into the job. I'm a Labor Upper House member in the South Eastern Metropolitan Region, which is an area which extends from roughly Clayton right down the coast of Frankston out to Rowville, Berwick and Beaconsfield as well. So I'm very privileged to look after the area that I do.
Yeah. The first question we have for you is, how was your high school and university life? Do you have any memorable moments?
Yes, so I went to my local public high school, which was Emerald Secondary College, growing up. Actually, I did love it there. It was a really, really good school. I learnt a lot that did set me up. It was actually whilst I was there at high school that I started my political advocacy. How I got involved with politics was, I grew up in a small town just outside Pakenham, but there was no bus route to get down to Pakenham from there. So I launched a petition, a campaign. This is when I was in year 8, I think, and over a couple of years, and the school were amazing and supported it as well, though it wasn't very much a non-school activity. And then I got connected with one of my local MPs. Her name is Tammy Lovato, and she was amazing, and she really fought hard for it as well. Long story short, we got the bus route delivered, and it really showed me that politics really can make a difference. So standing up and speaking out, you can make real change, and politicians, despite some of the raps that some of us get, by and large, most of us overwhelmingly are here to make positive change, and it's exciting that we can do that.
Yeah. So you've had a love for politics for basically from a young age, basically.
Yeah. I've always had an interest in politics.
Yeah.
I would say that I was possibly even a little bit jaded at that young age, thinking that politicians are in it for themselves, they don't want to actually do anything, but that experience really set me straight and showed me that there is actually a lot that you can achieve in this world.
Do you have any specific memorable moments though from your high school life or university?
Specific memorable moments. It's one of those questions where it's like there's probably so many and so many that what can I actually say as well?
Yeah, we don't want to get demonetized.
No. Definitely not. So in terms of memorable moments, look, I'm actually starting to think of one. Probably my exchange trip to Japan, which I was able to do in year 10, was really, really awesome. I got to live over in a small Japanese city for 3 months and really be part of that culture. Japanese is one of my favourite subjects.
Oh, so you did Japanese at school, yeah?
I did,
yeah. We have Japanese as well at our school. Japanese and Italian.
Oh,
so,
cool.
Yeah.
That's really good. We only had Japanese actually, but I'm glad we did.
Yeah.
That's quite a good mix. Do either of you do Japanese?
I did Japanese actually in primary school from year 2 to year 6, and I did it in year 7.
Yeah, I did Japanese and Italian from I was year 1, and then when I moved to Point Cook, I did Japanese, and then year 7 I did Japanese. Year 8 I just stopped.
Yeah, a lot of people stop after year 7. But I do know two of the girls in our year level though, they did it all the way to year 12.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
No, it's a good. Any language is a good subject.
Yeah,
exactly. It just really broadens your.
And it's a good boost to the ATAR as well with the scale.
It is. It is definitely.
Yeah. So we'll now go on. So I'll have the second question.
Yeah.
So who would you say is your political role model or idol?
Oh, really good question. I would actually, the story I just mentioned about Tammy, who was the MP I had back at the time, it would have to be her because she's the reason that I indirectly led to me being here today. As I said, she showed me that it's achievable. So many of, when you talk about inspirational political figures, so often we talk about the big leaders, the prime ministers, the foreign presidents, whatever it might be, and no doubt there are some fantastic ones and some fantastic leaders, of course, here in Victoria. But the best politics for me is local. So that local member role at its best can be really something quite special.
Yeah. What were some of your previous careers before politics?
Yeah, so I worked for about 11 years for a union called the SDA, which looks after retail and fast food workers. So you may have even heard of it because we do represent a lot of high school students.
Is it
and
the Shoppies?
The Shoppies,
yeah.
yes.
I know I didn't know the Shoppies. Yes.
Yes, that's us. It was a real privilege and honour to work for them for so long because I got to go to work each day and represent working people, whether was a student with a roster issue or working mum with a roster issue, all the way through to much more serious things, bullying, in some cases violence and other issues that they might have had as well. The whole range of things, being able to go and represent people in their workplace when they need it the most was really quite special.
Yeah, because Tobias, you work actually in you work for
Yeah.
Macca's, yeah. So
So you probably would have heard of us then.
yeah. You should join the shoppies, Tobias.
You
We'll
should.
see. We'll see.
I don't know if I've got a 4-1 but I'm sure I could find one for you. The stronger the unions are, and every union's the same, the stronger the unions are, the better they can be. Because at its best, unions are basically not there to put their own thing on, they're there to represent what people need. And I know I used to do a lot of work with Macca's as well. I was at the other side of the city, but there's always value.
So you worked there for 11 years, correct? So is that straight after university, or?
It actually was. It actually started as a part-time role during university, and then became full-time. So I started out just doing side projects, and then became a full-time, what we call organiser, where I was responsible for a whole region and looked after lots of different regions, including the CBD during the COVID years, which was
that would have been
quite full on.
Yeah,
quite full on.
Especially with a lot of the businesses shutting down and everything.
Absolutely. So most of my colleagues were dealing with other sorts of issues, with supermarkets being absolutely rammed with customers, and unfortunately saw a huge increase in violence and abuse towards our members as well, which became one of our biggest focuses during COVID. But as well as that, I was looking after some of the big department stores and the like in the city that were shutting down. So it's a different sort of thing that we had to do in that time.
Right.
I believe you're the next question.
Alright. So our fourth question. I understand you ran for the seat of Gembrook in the 2018 state election.
I did. You've done your research.
I did my research. There wasn't much on your parliamentary page, so I had to dig deep. So how was that experience running and campaigning in I would say, a relatively safe Liberal seat? Did it teach you a lot for your campaign in the 2022 election?
Yeah, the short answer is absolutely. I really, really enjoyed that campaign. So that part of the outer southeast is where I'm from, and so it was really meaningful for me to be able to run for that electorate. And even though I knew it was a very long shot, it was an 8.9% Liberal seat, so it was quite safe at the time. It was something that I felt the community needed to be heard in general, but also heard by us in Labor, and to really show that it is in contest and it was competitive. And happily, obviously there was a big statewide swing, but I was able to push a little bit above that swing even, and made it quite marginal at the end of that campaign. But it was a really, really good experience getting out, obviously reconnecting with a lot of the locals that I already knew, of course, but also when you're campaigning you meet so many more people. And I have to say as well, one of my lasting memories of that campaign, there was actually, quite bizarrely for any election, there was only 3 candidates. There was myself, Brad Batten, the incumbent Liberal member, and a girl called Amy Gorovich from the Greens. And quite unusual to have only 3, of course. And most of our
Very different to what happened in 2022.
Very different to last year, and the Mulgrave by-election just in the week, very different. So if you let me just mention this, it was quite a special experience actually. Our early voting centre that we had for our seat was one of 2 in the suburb of Pakenham, and ours was a bit more out of the way, so we were a little bit quieter. It was still the best place to resort to be, so Brad, Amy and myself were there virtually the whole 2 weeks, and we actually got on extremely well and still do. And people often assume that politicians all dislike each other. It's definitely not the case. We will have strong and genuine disagreements and argue them passionately. And some do take it to a little bit of a personal level, but for the vast majority, and from what I've seen in my experiences, there's no need to get to that level. And absolutely full credit to Brad in particular as the incumbent member. He was an absolute gentleman and a very tough but a very decent person to be campaigning against. And at one point the VEC officials actually made fun of all the candidates for getting on a bit too well. But it was something that I'll very much treasure from that campaign, and it's what politics should be about. It's a contest of ideas. It's not about tearing each other down. It's we all want to do things for the community. We have different ways about going about it, and we're making that argument to them, not trying to destroy the other person. And I think that's a really important thing.
Exactly. I think as well with politics, when both major political parties are working together, it's always better for the community. Exactly.
It is.
With a lot of legislation, when both sides are backing it, there's less division, less complications, and it's always important for the community because a lot of people see, even because most people just look at question time, for example, and they just see the bickering and they just see the interjections and everything. They just think that Parliament's such a divided place with Labor and Liberal, Greens, crossbench, just not getting along.
Yeah.
But even from what we've seen coming around here, you've got great friends in the Liberal Party as well.
I do.
Joe, Nick McGowan as well.
Yeah.
And they've got great friends as well in the Labor Party, so it's not all just division.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that we especially do in the Legislative Council, in the Upper House. The very nature of the chamber forces us all together a bit, where no one has control. Very rarely that would happen, but any sort of bill or motion that anyone wants to move forward has to be done by working through across different lines, and sometimes in wonderful lines too. But having those relationships and that mutual respect with majority of my colleagues in there, it means that when we do have those more difficult conversations, we can have them, and we can have if it comes to a bit of a tense debate, we'll have a bit of a crack and whatever else, but then we're still happy to have a proper conversation afterwards. And you can't quite see on the recording here, but in the background we have on the screen the Committee of the Whole that we're currently in. It's a very dry part of what we do in the council. It's very deliberative, line by line regulation. It's one of the things that can make us sort of sit all night if there's endless questions. There's no cap on it, but it's a really important part. And I recall a bill earlier in the year where there was a lot of work done, and genuine considered work, and Jacqueline Symes is actually up there again at the moment as the Attorney General, and worked with I believe it was Evan Holland from the Liberals and Kat Copsey from the Greens, and between all of them we got to a point where what I thought was a very good bill was refined that little bit further and made better, and that was an example of that place, the council, at its best.
Yeah.
Alright, do you want to, I have the next question again, okay. We're coming up now to our fifth question. What made you run in the 2022 election again from 2018?
Yep.
And for the Labor Party specifically?
Very good question. So it was something that I'd always, after 2018, I said it was a very good experience, and even though I didn't expect to win, I actually almost did at one point. I believe Anthony Green called it for me on the night, which was...
When Anthony calls it, that's a big
that
deal.
was, my phone blew up, hands were shaking, and I was told to go into the other room and write a speech. I was like, okay, but it went all over the place. But as I said, it was a really good experience, and it really remotivated me about why I wanted to do it in the first place, which is for the community. Originally my intention was to run for that seat again if I had the chance to do so, but there was a redistribution, and the way the seats fell, that wasn't going to be an option. And then the way things happened, an opportunity opened in the Upper House, which is what I went for. And I've got to say, now that I'm in the Upper House, it is a very special chamber, and I very much do love it. As for why Labor, that's a really good question. I've always been on the progressive side of the ledger. Always from the community perspective though, because I think it's really important to bring people with you when you make substantive change, and to be always speaking to Middle Australia. I think for me, Labor is the party that speaks to Middle Australia the most and the best, and we are most successful when we are engaging with Middle Australia. So I like the way about approaching reform of sometimes it's not everything that you want, but it's far better to get a much improved outcome, even if you don't get every single thing that you want, rather than fighting for that and never actually achieving it. That's broadly speaking, and of course also, will be remiss of me to talk about Labor and why I'm here, having been a union official, without saying workers' rights as well, because that is very important. You probably have Liberals say to you as well that they believe in equality of opportunity, and I'll say the same thing, which is quite funny how we say the same thing from different perspectives. But for me, equality of opportunity is when working people are supported, when they're lifted up, then everyone is better off.
Yeah, because I think as well, with the Labor Party as well, it's very, very, I'd say, pretty union-based political party in a lot of senses.
It is.
Yeah. So you know, especially when you were talking about there with the work, pushing workers up. I think that's a pretty core value within the Labor Party, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's one thing where, compared to other Labor parties or similar parties like the Democrats in the USA around the world, a lot of them over the latter part of the 20th century severed their links with the union movement, and I think that's been to their detriment. I think one of the reasons for the success of Labor generally in Australia has been its connection with the unions, but more importantly with the genuine needs and issues of working middle class Australians that the unions focus on.
Yeah.
All right then. We'll now get on to
The final question.
Great.
Finally, what is one piece of advice you would give to students in 2024, especially those who are entering university and high school?
Great question. I guess from a general point of view, pursue your passions. Don't feel like you have to be stuck with what people think that you should do. There is no right or wrong way to achieve what you want to achieve. Obviously, if you want to be a lawyer, you have to do a law degree. But if you do want to get politically engaged, and I'm assuming that people will be following this podcast, might be more inclined towards that way, there's no right or wrong reason. You can get into politics early in life, later in life. I've had a few conversations with people recently about their experiences going into or choosing not to go into student politics at university. It can be a bit of a exciting space. It can also be a very, very intense and sometimes a little bit aggressive space too. And so for those who want to explore that, by all means go for it. But I really would say, and I had a brief experience myself, about 1 year in student politics, but I didn't find it satisfying because I didn't see the direct value I could give to my community through it. And that's not to say that they don't do important stuff, they do. But for me, that value comes from being out in the suburbs in my region. So if it's not your cup of tea, don't feel that that's something that you have to do. There's many, many ways you can make a difference, and it can be at an earlier point, it can be a later point. As others have probably said, there's no formal qualification you need to be a politician, which is a good thing. We need, of course, lawyers and everything else in here. We are making laws, of course, but if we had no lawyers, it might not be the best, but if we had all lawyers, we wouldn't be representing the community and we would be out of touch. So it's really important that we have that balance, young, old, diversity of gender, race, sexuality, you name it, and we're getting there. Like Victoria is, as of this week, with a new member from Mulgrave being sworn in, we now have gender parity in this parliament for the very first time in our history. In the Legislative Council, I'm part of the class of 2022, which from us coming in last year was the very first time that we had a majority of women in the Legislative Council. And when you think that in the 1850s, when this council was first formed, they were all men.
Yeah.
They're all English. All white, rich men who own land. Women couldn't even vote, and now we have a majority of women, and that will fluctuate, that will go up and down, but that's a wonderful thing because it shows that we have always more work to do, but we've come so far as well.
Yeah, also just to say on that point as well, back in time of the Labor Party, my actual great grandfather was a
Really?
Labor member. Yeah, so
Fantastic.
I know. You remember Edmund Hogan as premier in the 1930s? He left to join the Country Party.
Yeah.
Yeah, my great grandfather was his chief campaign manager when he was premier.
That's amazing.
So when I think in '32, when he left because of the premier's plan, all the Labor. My grandfather was at the meeting. He was like in his 20s at the time.
Wow.
And they remember, and my grandfather he told my dad this. My dad told me a couple of days ago. He remembers all the members of the Labor Party, because this is up in Warren Heights, so just outside the Ballarat region, so like Gordon, Mount Edgerton, Ballan, that area. Yeah. So all the Labor members there were saying to my great grandfather, "You should go up for politics now and run against Edmund Hogan." And my great grandfather.
And he did?
He didn't do it because my great grandfather couldn't run against his best mate. He couldn't do it.
Fair enough.
So there could have been a chance my great grandfather was a member of Parliament and we would have had a Lillis here in like the 1930s. So
well, you have a stronger, richer Labor history than I do.
and actually my grandfather then joined the Labor Party, and he actually knew a lot of the Victorian Labor members. So Arthur Caldwell, for example, he was good friends with. I think he met Ben Chifley a couple of times. Yeah, you also met probably John Kane Senior as well.
Wow.
So
That
yeah,
would have been absolutely fascinating.
yeah.
I don't know if you've been into the Labor caucus.
Oh, we were there yesterday.
Yeah, I was going to say
yeah.
I'll take you up there, but you've already been.
Yeah.
And you might have seen all the old photos on
Yeah.
the walls.
I didn't. There was no Edmund Hogan ministry because
No,
of that.
no. But the best one, I'm not sure what era it's from, but it's very, very pre-Photoshop. They had a picture of all the MPs, and one of them obviously couldn't make it on that day, so they did a very dodgy Photoshop-esque thing. They literally cut his head out and stuck it behind the rest of the group. And if you look at it, you don't really notice it, but if you look at it, you see it, and it's very, very funny. And I'll try and get a photo for you guys.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Now, can I ask you something? How have you found your experience at Parliament this last couple of days that you've been here? What's been surprising to you about it?
When they go first.
So, for me, I'm not one into politics usually.
Yeah.
But this has been like a new experience because I've been here. I've been in Parliament in year 6.
Yeah.
But it's also more in depth than then.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a lot more
You've seen it from a
information.
different angle now.
Yeah. It's a lot more information and like, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very good.
it's been really good. You know, even being able to come into offices like this.
Yes, which normally you don't get to see
Yeah.
as a
You know, just seeing. I think outside. I think we saw. I think Tom McIntosh was just
Yes,
chilling outside. Yesterday morning when we were waiting for one of our interviews, Jacinta Allen and Ben Carroll just walked by casually.
Yeah.
So
fantastic.
we interviewed John Prosciutto yesterday.
Awesome.
It's been very, very crazy, and you know, it's a really different side to things because like when you see on the news and you see in the media, like you think these politicians are like really hardened politicians, stern people, you know.
Yeah.
And you would never think they would do this sort of thing. Like, you know, we're here right now and we're talking to you guys and like asking you guys questions, and you know, it's been a really good experience. Like,
I'm so glad.
yeah,
And good on you for reaching out as well,
yeah.
and taking that initiative. And I'm really glad that you're getting a good turnout of us, and I'll hopefully be able to get you some more too.
Like even yesterday with Richard Reardon, member for Polworth, he was telling us before the interview, he's never had a high school group ever come in to interview him, and he's been in Parliament for 8 years.
Yeah, well, you're my first group. I've only been here 1 year.
I mean, a good person probably to ask would be Jacinta Allen if she's ever had a group.
It would be. It would be.
If we can
get it.
Well, another one who's one of the, so obviously in the upper house we look after a region, we have 11 lower house seats. One of the MLAs, members of the Assembly in my region in Rowville, is a Liberal.
Kim Wells. I think we're going to have an interview with him in a couple of weeks.
Fantastic.
He's been there since like the 80s, hasn't he?
1992, which was the year I was born, as I like to tell him. But he'd be a great source.
I don't know how he's going to feel when we tell him we're born in 2005 and 6.
I want to hear what he says to that. I'll check out that podcast, definitely.
Yeah, I'll be out probably in a couple of weeks' time, so yeah.
Fantastic.
I think those are all our questions.
Yeah.
Great.
So,
thank you so much, both of you.
thank you for giving us the time, Michael. I know question time starts in 15 minutes.
Question time is in a few minutes.
So
I better go.
You better go rush over there. So thank you again for giving us the opportunity to interview you. And
thanks very much.
hopefully we can maybe see you down the line actually.
I'd love that. Look forward to it.
Yeah, thank
Been
you
a
again.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Francis.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Tobias. Thank you.